This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Yes, they are, and it just occurred to me that this is the first Friday of the month when I saw Marshfield Mayor Bob McManus walk in. I thought, wow, it's that. It seemed like it should have been last week.
Should have been last week, yeah.
But last week was the 31st.
Yep.
This is as late as it can be here, the first Friday.
Yep.
And normally we talk to you out at the mayor's breakfast, but it wasn't the first Friday.
No.
It usually lands that way.
Missed it by 24 hours.
You were out there again this year at the dairy breakfast, and you brought, it looked like the whole family, even in the parade on Saturday.
Yeah, I had three of the boys there because I've got 5 kids, and that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for them to come home. So that was it was a surprise of Hunter. That was a surprise that he showed up. So that was nice.
And what's it like being the first family?
Well, it's last year I was so nervous at the parade. Well, at the breakfast and the parade, and this year I was actually able to enjoy it. And this year it seemed like there were more people there. I mean, the weather was great. Amy Krogman always does a great job of setting everything up. There's so many volunteers, so many companies donate things, and so we were able to get a lot of people through. There is amazing because we had all 3 lines going. And people were showing up faster than we could serve them, so it was good.
So this year now, we've kicked off the summertime. Our Central Avenue construction is underway, and any blowback from that?
Well, there's been... It's interesting always talking about the roads. I've had a couple of people. One guy in particular came up to me, and I was so shocked at his statement. He's like, why are we doing all this road work? It's over on Veterans Parkway, and it's on Upham, and you've got Central ripped up. And he's like, what are you doing? And I thought, wait a minute. Would you say that again so I could clarify that he was actually upset about it? But this project on Central is a big project. I mean, they've got big equipment out there, and, they're cutting stuff up, putting new – I just saw them this week, laying concrete down. So that's got to take a little while to cure before they could put on the final layer. So from what I understand so far, it's all on schedule. So that's a good thing. It's interesting because sometimes you go out there and early in the morning, I drive to work that way, and I make a point of going up and down Central, probably 3 or 4 times a day. I get excited about that stuff, watching it take place, almost as if it's going to go faster because I'm looking at it. I know that's not the case, but it's very interesting what it is that they're doing. So I don't some days you go out there and there's a lot of people working. Other days you go out there and there's like 2 or 3. So that part I don't understand, but it has to do with curing and other things. So,
well, I'm sure they're doing as on schedule as they can be with the weather that we've
right.
had. Planting is off, and we're getting reports of field work, having a hard time getting it done with the amount of rain that we've had this spring.
Right.
Let's go to the phone. Joanne, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I was just wondering, is Culverts and Perkins the only 2 restaurants in Marshfield that accept senior discounts? I know Arby's and Melody Gardens are the only 2 restaurants that I know that accepts checks anymore. And I know Schwann's accepts ARPs, and I belong to, the ARP. And I know Walgreen does, but that isn't a restaurant. So I was just wondering if Culverts and Perkins are the only 2 restaurants that have discounts for seniors.
I'm not exactly sure. I know many of them have a senior menu.
Yeah.
That I've seen, like over at Melody Gardens and a few others, and I'm sure that those are discounted. And of course, Pick and Save, I think it's Tuesday is senior day, but the other ones you just have to check as you go. I know many of them do have senior discounts, but I can't give you a list of which ones do and which ones don't.
As far as I know, those are the only 2 in Marshfield that do, but I'm not sure either.
Well, the other ones would be, I know many of the restaurants around have a senior, a special spot for a senior menu. So I would guess that those are discounted, but I'm not sure. You'd have to check with those retailers.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank you.
And if you are listening right now, you're live here on WDLB, you can call us 384-2191, 384-2191. Otherwise, you may be watching us. It's being videoed here by Marshfield Media Access, and you can rewatch that on 989. It's back up and running again. And I don't know if they took any blowback from the parade. Yeah, it's not being live, because with the switchover that happened and the equipment that was taking place, it was you try to explain it to people, and they don't want to hear that. They just want to know yes or no. How come? I want it on. And they did video it, and it is in replay, but it wasn't live per se.
No, it wasn't live. The future ones going forward will be. So, for instance, the Christmas parade that will be coming up will be. We are finally very, very happy about this. We're finally back up on our channels, 989, 990, and 991. Charter finally made the cutover. It was a long, grueling process. Tom Laux and David in our communication department did a great job of working with them. All of our stuff was prepped and ready to go. We had everything there. It was all about the connections and running hubs through different cities, and it was amazing how convoluted that process was. And when Tom was hired back in January, he took it over from where many of the people at City Hall had it, and was literally on the phone with them every day. So it was a grueling process.
It was an upgrade as well as just a switchover. People think you just throw the switch and now we're over here instead of over there. It was upgrade of a lot of equipment.
Yes, and we got a lot of our equipment we got in. Some of it we were able to repair, others we did not. So now our studios are all up and functional, and we're recording in those. The community producers can come in and they can do all of the work that they do. They can cut and edit and do everything that a community producer was. So, and you're going to start seeing more and more shows coming on that I think the public is going to be very interested in. We have the typical ones with the fire chiefs, and we're going to do some other ones on people within the community, business owners coming in and doing interviews with them so we can understand about the different businesses and what they do and what they're about. I think that's going to be very good. So I think what you're going to see coming here in the near future from our cable, our communication department on cable, I think you're going to like it.
I'm amazed at how much you know about that, because now it's under the city's proprietorship, if you will.
Right.
So it's something in your wheelhouse now, or in your realm.
Well, it is, and there was, as we all understood, it was a big learning curve when you go from a third party doing it, and now you bring it in. Fortunately, we have the folks with the experience that can run that and can not only do everything that was being done before, but run our website and run everything else. So we've really turned it into a quite efficient, which not something you normally hear that government would do. But before there was talk when we were having meetings of, do we switch over? Or do we keep it, really the way it is? We were told that the way they were doing it before, there was 4.5 people to run the day-to-day operations, and could we really do it with 2? And it appears that we're doing a great job. Now, I will say this. We've had a lot of people from the outside come help us film. You see David out at so many of the different. You can't see him right now because he's filming this, but he's out at all the groundbreakings and all those ceremonies and everything else. And we've had some really nice help from the public. Don has come in, and he's Don Nystrom has come in, and he's doing some announcing. He and Mr. Mark Watt were actually the MCs at the fair. It was nice to see them back in those roles. TJ's been out there. He's been doing some filming for us, Don Schnitzler. So we're really getting, and this is what we were hoping for, that community involvement of helping let's get Marshfield on video and let's tell the stories here. So the more this gets traction, the more excited we're getting. It is the big holdup was getting charter done over. So now we're gonna, we will have a YouTube channel, and we're going to, in the not too distant future, we will be doing Facebook Live for the Common Council meetings, which for those people that don't have charter, they'll be able to get involved in as well. So we're going to do everything we can to get as much information out to the public as we possibly can. But we're thrilled with the work that Tom and David are doing. Thrilled.
The TV part of this, though, is only, I don't want to say a small portion. I don't know, I'd say a quarter to a third of it. But then there's the other 2/3 that's also getting the city business disseminated amongst the public.
Right.
Finding out what you guys need to do, whether it's newsletters, is it internal or external? I mean, a lot of it is pushing it out, or is communications also in-house?
It'll help with communications in-house, but a lot of it is going to be getting communication out. So we are doing a weekly newsletter, and we're going to get that out. Try to get it out to different places where people can pick it up, because people receive information in so many different ways. Of course, social media, the newspaper, there's less and less of that. But there's different outlets here. So we want to put some in print too for the people that the traditional way. And if we can drop some of those off at the Quick Trips and the libraries and the senior center and things like that, so people are engaged or involved. There's a lot going on in the city. Boy, I'll tell you what, the last weekend over the Dairy Fest weekend with the breakfast, and then everything that was going on that night at Columbia Park and the Wenzel Family Plaza. And then on Saturday, of course, there was the cheese chase, the parade, and then there was things again going on at the plaza. And then at Nuts Deep that night, there was a concert. There was softball tournaments going on, cornhole, or whatever they call it, where you throw the bag in the hole at the box or whatever that you see it everyone's doing now. There was that big tournament going on at the fairgrounds. There's a lot going on. And we want to do a better job of communicating that so people can come out and enjoy it. We are seeing that more and more people are coming out to the plaza. And the plaza is being I think it's taught me a lot, certainly, that, being in a leadership role, you have to be able to muddle through the negativity and look at what's going to be ultimately good. Because as you well remember, prior to the plaza going up, a lot of negativity. And I'm sure as you remember, prior to 13 going through the expressway, a lot of negativity. The Holiday Inn, when they went there, huge amount of negativity. Now everybody uses 13. People love going to the Holiday Inn. People love going to the plaza. You've got to really be able to have that vision. But if you look at it now, what's going on there in the morning, on Saturday mornings, they'll have polka bands over there so the seniors can walk around. Of course, the water feature is there. And now I understand that yoga program that's going on there on Saturday mornings has gotten so big that they're actually providing childcare there so that the people that do enjoy yoga can have their kids there, and they will be supervised so that the adults can do yoga. I mean, it's whoever thought that would have happened. So it's nice to see that going on. And so with our city communications, we're looking to do a better job and keep getting better at getting as much information out as we possibly can.
Talking with Marshfield Mayor Bob McManus. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2191 here live on AM 1450 WDLB this 7th of June. AM 1450, WDLB's Inside Program, coming to you live on this first Friday in June. Kind of snuck up on me here. I thought we were already past that first Friday, but here it is. And coming to you in rebroadcast on Marshfield Media Access, where you can see us on Channel 989 at various times throughout the month. And you can also find us online as well with video. Talking with Mayor Bob McManus, he avails himself to you here, 384-2191, once a month here on the first Friday of the month. And we're making it through June Dairy Month now, and lots of things going on around the area here. As far as city business is concerned, summertime light as well.
Summertime light, as we were discussing this while we were off, there was, we just had the, at the last council meeting, we had our auditors come to go over, the findings of the audit. Because as you remember, earlier in the year, there was a big shockwave on we're $1.6 million short. And so, we had to let the finance people go through this, and the way we were doing that accounting prior was, and nobody likes to do this, Jeff. People in government hate to say this word. They just hate it with a passion. We were doing it wrong. We made a mistake, and that's not something popular that in government, for some reason, people just can't say. My frustrating part, well, I'll get to my frustrating part. So we found out a couple of months ago that we were going to be a $1.6 million short. Well, there's only a couple of different ways that you can make up $1.6 million short. To make a long story short, what happened was in the TIF districts, we were, to make up for budget shortfalls, the TIFs were actually putting money into the general fund to kind of balance it out. Well, that's just not a good way to balance your budget. It artificially keeps the taxes low. That was not the intent. There wasn't any big conspiracy theory that that's what anybody was going to do. It's just kind of what the net effect is. Well, when we come to find this out, we asked the auditors and the people that ran the TIF a few months ago why this, why this happened. And they said, we saw it, but we figured it because that's what you were wanting to do. We didn't bring it up. Well, that just doesn't make any sense at all. So they went through and they did their work, and we formulated, or Ron, our new finance director, that has done amazing work, he and Amy Van Wy, amazing work to realize that the type of system we were utilizing before was not crediting back interest and fees that the city put out on behalf of these TIFs. So now it comes down to we're still going to be about $1.2 million short in the budget, and we just had our the meeting with the auditors, and because of this, we've actually found some other money, which is good. That made our in essence our city savings account better, which is good. But now when we go to do the budget in this coming year, we're not going to be able to count that $1.2 million. We're not going to be able to count on that money coming over because it never should have been coming over. So now you are in a major budget shortfall. So my question to the auditors was, why didn't you tell? Well, first I said, is this the standard practice that other municipalities use? And I got this long answer. And you know what happens when the answers start getting too long? They're not making any sense. And so I let him get through, and then I said, okay, I appreciate your answer. Now, can I ask you this? Is the way that we were doing it wrong? And do other municipalities do it? Still got that. And they just couldn't say the way you were doing it was wrong. So I went about it a different way, and I said, would you advise other municipalities to do it the way we were doing it? No. Okay, then there you go if you're not going to give that advice. And I said, so if we're paying you as auditors to catch us, almost to protect us from ourselves, then if you see something that's going wrong, you've got to bring it up in your report, because there are different things that they bring up on their report. And we finally got down to that. Now that we've got that, people think it's behind us. It's not. We just know it's there. Now, the accounting procedures and whatnot, those are all cleared up. Everything has been cleaned up and it is shipshape, and people can go in and you don't need to have a PhD in accounting to figure out what's taking place. It's set. But now the real issue comes up when we go to do the budget in August, September, and October. There's going to be a pretty big void to fill, and so that's where it's going to get painful.
Somebody's going to have to take some cuts.
You are exactly right. And I am adamant. And I've let everybody know. Ultimately, it's too easy to do this. And this is why I think the government should be, because the problem I had, Jeff, was back when we had this budget issue come up. I mean, it was like a big deal. And the next day, everybody just went back to work like it's no big deal. And it's like, no, it is a really big deal, because my problem is that most of the time, what's going to happen is it's going to go back to the taxpayer, and they're going to have to pay it. I'm not. That infuriates me to do that, and so it's just infuriating. So there are. Go ahead.
Can't you amortize that loss out over a period of time as opposed to trying to slap it all in 1 year?
That's absolutely what will be done, but but you have to look at that loss. And it's a 5-year plan, so each year is going to have a certain fall. So one thing we're doing is we're restructuring our debt. Some of our debts we had on 10-year notes, and realistically most municipalities have them on 20-year notes. So we're restructuring a lot. Interest rates are a little bit better. So Ron is doing a great job of looking at every different option there to get our finances on the right path. One thing that we know is, at one point we were at 63% debt capacity. Right now we're at 55%. So we brought that down. We've made a lot of good moves, but the way government works is just it's just odd. So I'm hoping that we can get this down to where it's reasonable, but government is very interesting. Another point, another frustration I have with government that I'll share with you is we have our building codes here in Marshfield, and they are, we go by the law because the codes, because it's life and safety. So our inspectors go and they go and they enforce what is supposed to be done. Make sure that steps are the right size and you've got enough building materials and the right building materials and all that to make sure that those are done. And I've heard that, the city is tough. Well, now, just that's one aspect of it. And this part here is is frustrating because we are mandated by the state. Matter of fact, we're getting audited by the state on the 18th or 19th, our building code division, to make sure that we've got all the paperwork in line, everything is there, so that all the rules are enforced. Now, if you go outside of the city limits, then those townships are mandated by the state. This is why people think that it's difficult to build and do things within the city, because we're so much harder. All we're doing is enforcing the code. We're not doing anything else. But if you go build a business or a home in those other outside areas, that's mandated by the state. You pay a fee and you really never have anybody to show up. Matter of fact, there are some times when things are signed off on, businesses, where the inspector never even comes out because they're too busy. So they will sign off on everything, or they'll go to a business that just erected a new beautiful business and they won't do any code enforcement. They just sign off on it. So where's the fairness to a municipality when the same state regulator here is doing an audit on you to make sure that everything is, you've got to be tight with people, but out in the country, no issues. It becomes a real big issue of fairness. And so I'm going to be working with a few of the different municipalities to go to our representatives and go to the state and say, look, you got to clear this up. You cannot have a double set of standards for building a home or building a business within a municipality or outside when you're trying to enforce things. It's just not fair. And those are just some of the things where you just, you throw your hands up.
Talking with Marshfield Mayor Bob McManus here on this first Friday in June on the 7th, coming to you live here on AM 1450 WDLB. Able to take your phone calls? Go ahead, Dave. You're on the air.
Thank you, Jeff, and I have a couple of questions for the mayor. Does it appear that your auditors were not properly doing their jobs during the course of, I'm assuming, a number of years when this budget shortfall developed? And if they indeed were not doing their jobs properly, does the city have any recourse legally to recover some of the money that was paid to them over those years?
You know what, Dave, I'm going to give you two answers to that. The first answer would be a typical political answer, that, the auditors were doing what they were doing with the numbers that they had going off of the information that they were giving from the city financial people. That is the politically correct answer. Now I'm going to give you my answer. They were doing it wrong. There should have been some accountability there. If you're going to go and you're going to take on the responsibility, in my opinion, to audit, Dave, it's like you and I when we do our taxes and we go to our CPA and the CPA, we give them all the paperwork and then they create our taxes to send them off to the IRS. And then in the IRS, they come back and they audit you and you say, you know what, you took some expenses that you shouldn't have, so we're going to tax you more and there's going to be fines on that. You go to your CPA and say, why didn't you bring this to my attention? Well, that's what you gave me and I thought you wanted to do. Dave, that's just not a realistic answer. So I believe it was done wrong. Now, as far as can we go back and is there accountability? This is the craziest part. There is none, because the way it was being done was just a non-traditional way. There was no money lost. Every penny was allocated for. So and this issue where you run into problems, Dave, is that was money missing. And that was my biggest thing right up front. Not being a conspiracy theorist, but, when 1.6 million doesn't just, you don't just lose that. What we found is that no money was missing. There was no intentional malfeasance or anything like that. It was just the system that they were using was just wrong. And so I asked them the question of, don't you think you should have brought that to our attention? And they said, we did talk to the finance director at the time, and everyone was aware of it. And I says, well, don't you feel that since the city of Marshfield is the one signing the check for the fee, that if you talk about that, then you should bring that up in the report? Because when the common council gets these, our auditors come one time a year and they give you the display. And I will tell you, when these folks came, and it wasn't when these folks came in our last council meeting, and if you get a chance, go back on our website and replay it and just watch them. It looks like everything is great. I mean, it looks like the city is doing swimmingly well, which, in many instances we are, but no one really wanted to take accountability for the mistake. And there's no, to your bigger point there's nothing we could do to go back at fees or anything like that, because nothing was being done illegal or nothing was being done wrong per se.
All right. Well, not really a real satisfactory answer there, and I hope you have consulted with your legal people, because you've said the key word several times, accountability, and so many times in government you get the answer that mistakes were made but nobody made them. And it seems like the taxpayer always winds up holding the bag in these situations. So I hope you'll take a look at that, and I thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you very much.
384-2191, 384-2191, live here on AM 1450 WDLB. Yeah, it's a tough one. Until you've been, and this is kind of off subject, but it sounds like you're dodging. So many times when you're in office or when you're on a board or when you're on, it's like, well, why didn't you? Well, why didn't you? Well, why didn't you? Or can't you? And it's like, no, there's rules, there's accountability. Well, they weren't accountable. Nobody's accountable for that. And it's like, I am hearing in your voice that you're trying your darndest not to have to increase. It wouldn't be unreasonable for there to be, since there's no longer $1.6 million in the annual budget that was annually counted on, it wouldn't be out of the question that there would be an increase for the citizenry, for taxes. I know you're going to try to keep that out, but on the other hand, are you going to cut a squad car? Are you going to cut an ambulance? Are you going to cut, somebody, public service? My water main isn't going to get fixed as fast. We're not getting a sharp jackhammer anymore. I mean, there's serious cuts that have to be made here.
There could be serious cuts, and the reality of the situation is, it's very frustrating. I don't. And I believe that's one of the reasons that many people chose to vote for me is I don't play the political game. For me, it was wrong. And it was just clean wrong. And I don't do the politically correct answers and things like that. I can say that there was no embezzlement or anything like that, but the procedure was wrong. How do you know it was wrong? Because for me, it was very frustrating for here. It'd probably be very frustrating for you to hear if you're sitting there in a meeting and it's wide open, saying everything went the way it should. This is all fine. It's not used very often. It's not illegal. Blah 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 blah. But if the end result is that you're way off, I call 1.6 million way off, then that's wrong. It was the wrong way to do it. And what I don't want to happen is when you see this in governments all over, is at the end of the day, it's too easy for people to say, well, just go to a tax increase. Just put it on the citizens. Because the citizens of Marshfield, just like, and I will say this, just like citizens in many different cities, are getting squeezed from things like this. The building inspector and people and contractors and businesses having to go that extra mile on these other things when right next door in another township, they don't have any of this. Why is that? That's not fair. Do it fair across the board. The people that make these laws are, I don't know how they do them.
But I want to interject something here that we seem to be heading toward. And I think when you talk about prosecution or accountability, was there malice? When you talk about if you're going to do this in a legal sense, there has to be some forethought given to people who are doing this on purpose to do, and you can't find that.
That is definitely not there.
And that's why you can't go back and find auditors and find, because
Right.
they didn't do it intentionally.
Right.
And that sounds like one of these where everybody says, every other guys, with the information that I had, I think is the term you used. That's not malice. You can't prosecute somebody or fine somebody when there was no intent. Well, yeah, you were still doing 35. I didn't intend to break the speed limit, but I did. I understand that.
Right.
But this a little more black and white. This was a case where they put it in the wrong column. There was no money taken. There was nothing missing. So how can you? This is one of those things.
Well,
I hate to say it, like you said, one of those things.
It's one of those things, but at least come out and say it was wrong. At least give closure to it, because, the city, Steve Barg, the city administrator, and Ron, our finance director, there is no stone being unturned as far as what is going. We're trying to do to make this budget shortfall small. All of the departments have we've let them know when you submit your budgets, we might have to think about not being able to buy certain things in the next year. I, for one, I'm not interested in cutting anything public safety wise, not one thing. And I believe it's important to be honest with the people right up front. When we first got this, we wanted to. Many people wanted to wait until the audit was done so that they come out in when they did at our last Common Council meeting and bring it all then. And I said back when I first heard this, absolutely not. We need to go to the public, and they deserve. My belief system, it is our responsibility to inform them of what this is. And so I'm glad we did that.
So what could have been a bombshell started as a grenade, and it's just kind of, not as big of a deal had everybody went, what?
Right. Because the big question, the question you would be asking me right now would be, Bob, you just had this out in the Common Council meeting, just this meeting, 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. When did you first know about this? Well, Jeff, I knew this back in January. Your question would be, why didn't you tell me then? Why weren't we informed? And I'm committed to the citizens of Marshfield that when there's things going on, we're going to let you know. You need to be a part of this, and a part of the solution. So I'm hopeful that when we get to budget time, things go along well. Right now, if you look at and I don't want to go too Pollyanna the other way, but if you look at our tax rate at $9.29 per thousand, you compare it to the other, Rapids and Stevens Point, they're in the high 9s, lows 10s, and Wisconsin Rapids is at $12.35 per thousand. So we're low. And if you look at your tax bill, because many people complain our taxes are so high, but if you look at your property tax bill, it's stayed just about the same over the last 5 to 6 years. Never went up.
And what else has in retail?
What else has? I mean, the price of everything has gone up. So the city is done there. And the problem is sometimes is if you don't do small incremental adjustments, you get hit real hard. So we're going to do everything we can to keep it reasonable. I just want to make sure that the citizens are aware along the process. I would much rather do that than, to just wait till October and go, surprise. That's not fair and it's not right.
384-2191 is our number here, 384-2191. This first Friday of the month of June, we're talking with Marshfield Mayor Bob McManus, and you can too, live on WDLB. You may be watching us here on Marshfield Media Access. We'll be back to talk more in a moment. AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program for the first Friday in the month of June. You know that if you're listening to us live here on WDLB, or you could be watching the video from Marshfield Media Access as we're talking with Mayor Bob McManus. He joins us in the studios the first Friday of the month to avail himself to your questions and comments as well, and just kind of talking things in the city here. It's nothing too exciting this time of the year. It's a lot of, as I watch some of the things that you do and on the government channel, I'm like, jeez, what a snooze fest. Right. I mean, right. No offense, but
none taken.
But wow, I mean, to have you and council people sit there and go through these things, and each one of them is very important to all the people that are involved.
Right.
It's hard to lose somebody in the process along the way where it's like, after a while, it's like you just fall asleep. You lose your train of thought there for a while. And you just seem to bounce from one thing next on the agenda. And now you're up to this, and I'm like, geez, I missed the last three because I was, letting my mind wander.
Well, some of the things that we do discuss are monotonous, and you have to, but
sometimes they're 4 or 5 times before, readings before right. you, and that gets old.
And so we have a council meeting coming up on Tuesday, and we got our packet of information from the city administrator, myself and the alderman. We get a packet of information. I believe this one is about 120 pages long, and it's the all the different committees and their minutes between the last one. as well as what we're going to be discussing this coming Tuesday. So you have to read all the minutes that are going on before you get to that council meeting. So if one gets pulled off, or you're updated on what goes on, because so much happens at the committee level.
And people will ask you about that
You
because
better
it's
believe it.
involving their life, and you're like, I don't know anything about that. This is in committee.
Right.
Well, that's not satisfying
Right.
to them.
No. And then what we are going to discuss that night, that you have to read the information. Sometimes you have to go out and you have to take a look at the different things. You have to do some background information. So when you get to that meeting, you're prepared on each one of those. Some of the ones just go through and you watch the council members, whoever is presenting, say Bryce Hembrook is presenting some new resolution. He goes through the resolution, then asks for approval. I'll ask for a motion and an approval, and there's no discussion. Please vote, and it goes through 10-0. And the public is like, well, wait a minute, what just happened? There's been hours that have gone into getting it to that point to where everybody on the council understands kind of where we're at. But then you get to the hot button issues, and those sometimes, and I stopped trying to do this. I stopped looking at a council meeting, the agenda, and going, oh, this is going to be an easy meeting. We'll get through this pretty quick. I stopped that because you never know where it's going to be a hot button.
Where somebody's emotions may lie.
Right.
And why?
Right.
Because their constituents in their district may be really vehement about that particular item. Talking with Mayor Bob McManus, you can too here on AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program, live on this first Friday of the month. Stan, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, I would like to say that I think they need a stop-and-go light at Festival Foods. It's really hard to get on there. And at Fleet Farm. Those are the two worst corners in Marshfield. But I just thought I would call and tell whoever's there that I think that's something that could be improved on.
All right. You probably have a lot of agreement in that. Thank you for participating.
That's fine.
All right. That's, when the mall was going great guns back in the 80s, there was one on the corner there. They took that one away because it just, there wasn't that much traffic coming in and out of that parking lot anymore, that it required there to be another stoplight. It seems like you can see the next one you're already at, and you see 5 more down the road, and you hope you can hit them all green, which would be like, buy a lottery ticket if that happens that day.
Right.
But, yeah, pulling out is a problem. Not as much in the summer, but especially in the wintertime.
Right.
You need to have the traffic slowed down so you have a chance. And everybody will say, well, they're spaced just wrong, because if they're not going this, there are certain intersections on this program. I said to people, when you're going to the east and you're going in back of the mall by Kohl's on Ives or on Upham by Simplicity, and you want to turn left and cross 2 lanes of traffic, you better bring a lunch.
Right.
Because you're going to be there a while. That's a rookie move. If you're a Marshfieldian and you don't turn left onto there, or coming off of Arnold and Peach, and you want to turn left, there's people coming under the trestle, and as soon as that clears, then they're coming the other way.
Right.
And you'll sit there a while. But that's just the way it goes sometimes.
It's just traffic patterns and whatnot. And Tom Turchi does a great job of keeping up on that, as well as hot spots, that there's some other over by the schools where we're always hearing about near misses of folks getting hit or something like that. And we do keep an eye on that. Tom could tell you about every accident that's taken place in the city. And that's really how they start evaluating things, is when, obviously, when we hear from citizens like this gentleman, that's good to hear. And we'll certainly let Tom know about that. And I'll be interested to get Tom's response, because it'll be something like, we know that's going on there. We're looking at it, or something. He knows about every street, every location. It really is amazing.
And in my mind, when I hear that, that's putting in another traffic light's about as popular as raising taxes.
Right.
It's like, are you kidding? You got another one on Central Avenue? But if you're the guy who's sitting there waiting for traffic to go from one to another, and people will try to get halfway.
Right.
At least I get across this, so they're not coming from the left. Now I got to wait. I'll get out there. So now you're out in no man's land, so to speak. You're trying to get across to tell the traffic from the right clears.
Right. And what I enjoy about the citizens of Marshfield is when, a lot of people come up and they'll ask me things, is you can actually get into a discussion And and many times people can see the other person's point of view, and that's very helpful, because in the world we live in today, if you don't like my opinion, then I don't like you, or I unfriend you, or whatever. And I think here in Marshfield is people can still have dialogue and disagree, and or maybe open their mind to something that maybe they didn't see before. So I believe that's beneficial.
And finishing each other's thoughts.
Right.
Or if you say this, you must mean that.
Right.
If you say this, then you're on the left or you're on the right, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, when you talk to people, though, you don't have that as much face-to-face.
Face-to-face is always the best way of communicating, because on an email, you could say so much. Social media, people say stuff behind those typewriters that they would never say in person. And you can get more resolution. A lot of times when I have people that I talk with that are complaining about something, the roads, or they have a suggestion like that gentleman about the traffic light, or just an issue. It's amazing how when you listen to what they're saying and acknowledge it, how much that helps them on their perception of that idea that they have, or the problem that they have. People want to be heard. And we're not in a very listening society these days. And so I believe it's helpful.
It's tough because there's that keyboard response that you get. You have to weed out the cynics.
Right.
Some people, they are emboldened to say some things that they wouldn't say in person, but they're not wrong. They're just not very, how would I say, outgoing when it comes, they'll walk home from a meeting and they didn't say anything, when in the back of their mind they had something they wanted to say.
Right.
But they'll say it on a keyboard. As long as you can weed the cynics out and say, they're just being, this thing sucks all the time, it's
right.
always terrible, that's a city again, they'll always steal from you, they just want to raise your taxes and all that cynical stuff that they say. But there is a nugget of truth, somewhere in there along the line, usually, from the people who are being honest.
Right. And everyone's opinion is valid. Everyone's opinion matters, and it does need to be voiced. It's just the way, sometimes I think the way people do it, especially on social media, some of those things just, you start going into personal attacks of people that you've never met. It's like, it doesn't serve a purpose.
Talking with Mayor Bob McManus, running out of time here. Before we get away, we had talked about a situation or something that is, it's like the fire station and everything. It goes on and on and on. Are we coming closer to a HEFCO pool?
We are coming closer. The Common Council actually approved the fundraising arrangement that we have in place, and they're going to start the design process of the pool so that we can have the design. We have renderings of it the way it is, but now they've got to go back, because when they did this initially in 2017, the cost then was $6 million. Well, it's probably going to be higher. We could cross our fingers that it's going to be lower, but and so that could be bid out in January, because that's where you get the best. A lot of the contractors don't have business yet, so we're hoping that we get some good bids going on then. And then if all works properly, then we would break ground on that in August of 2020. So we'd have a little bit of swim time next summer, break ground in August of 2020, and try to have it open by the next summer.
That's those years. You're talking years. You didn't say we will do it in a few months or a few weeks, and that's what I mean. When the government ship turns, it turns slow.
Well, this is the first time. In other words, if they just got approval to do everything, so it's actually turning quite fast. In the fact of the approval has approved it. Now it goes, and it could take between now and January 1st, just for the the renderings and the drawings and the design of this to be done. Then once that is there. And that's not the city's not doing the design. A design company is doing it. Then it goes out for bid. Once it goes out for bid, then there has to be a time for construction to begin. So it's actually from that standpoint, because we're not going to begin construction in November, December, January, February, March. Everyone knows that. We want to make sure that the snow is gone, give people a little bit of a chance to have some pool, and then start it next August.
So you're part of this. And the approvals have pretty much been agreed to in principle.
Yes, there's in principle, actually, it's moving forward about as quickly as it possibly can right now. My understanding is that they've been talking about a pool since 2000, and even before that.
And see, that's what I meant when I said it turned slow. It just seems like it to the public because they've been hearing about it.
And they've been hearing
decades.
we're going to do. And I've tried to, when we bring up a topic, let's either do it or not do it. Let's stop with the take forever to do this stuff. And so I've been a big advocate of the pool, and to get to this point relatively quickly. The council has a great appetite for it. I don't know why it took this long for the last 10 years or so. I don't know why they didn't do it, but it's got to be done. There's safety issues there. It's an economic development tool as well for the summer. Some people say, it's only going to be open 3 months. Well, it's like, 3 months in the summer is a big deal with economic development, because people that go do that will then go to the zoo, they'll go to the park, they'll go to local restaurants, they'll come in from other cities. It's going to be a great thing for the city.
Well, thank you for stopping by, and hope you enjoyed yourself on your Mayor's Dairy Breakfast and Dairy Fest this year.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Bob McManus joining us here on the Inside program for June 2019, coming to you on AM 1450 WDLB.
Your hometown radio station, AM 1450 WDLB Marshfield, a Seehafer broadcasting station.